verification testing where we have, and acceptance testing where we make sure that all the performance considerations have been addressed and there are no lags as far as your SLAs are concerned. Now, I'll just go a little deeper into each of these steps. So like I mentioned, when we talk about planning and preparation, the first thing is, as a project manager or as an architect, the first question is what would be the scope of my project? Because as a customer, I might have hundreds of applications and I don't really want to move all of them at once onto DB2, right? We would want to start somewhere, and that's something that we need to decide. What kind of applications am I going to enable onto DB2? So there are again considerations, things like what platforms are supported by DB2. Fortunately, most of the popular platforms, whether it's Windows or Linux platforms, are supported on DB2. So that should not really be a constraint when we're talking about enabling applications on DB2. But things like which are the most critical applications for me, which are the ones which are going to save me a lot of cost, a lot of CPU costs. Where am I going to save the maximum licensing cost? Where am I spending the maximum? So all of these things are considered when we look at scoping a project for migration. And then obviously there are technical details like what are the number of concurrent users, what are the kind of workload characteristics that we're looking at, the complexity of the project, when is the go live date, and what kind of database objects does it have complex PLSQL objects, what kind of interfaces the application has, does it have only a web interface, is there a standalone interface, is it just a client server architecture, or how it is. So all these things need to be considered along with the advanced features which are available with most popular databases, things like database partitioning feature, compression, and other things. So to facilitate this activity, to facilitate the assessment or the viability of the enablement program, we have something called as the conversion assessment questionnaire. So as of today, this is basically a Word document. So whenever we get into conversation with customers and business partners, trying to tell them the approach that we take. So the first thing is we ask them to fill in this conversion assessment questionnaire. So this questionnaire is basically, it lists down various questions about the applications that they are planning to migrate or enable on DB2. So it has questions like number of users that are going to be connected, what kind of interfaces they have, or what is the kind of programming language that has been used to develop the application. And there are several other details that we capture in terms of database. So database characteristics like what could be the approximate size of the database, are there multiple partitions to it, the hardware, the operating system on which the database is currently running, and other database object details like the number of tables indexes used, and the functionality. Does it have only SQL-based functionality, whether it's user-defined functions or stored procedures, whether they're just SQL-based, or is there are there some external functions and stored procedures which are written in maybe any other programming language like Java or C, C++. So what this conversion assessment questionnaire does is it allows us to get a fair idea of the complexity involved in the application as of today, and at the same time it can tell us whether it's really feasible to go ahead with migrating the application onto DB2, and if at all, what is the kind of effort that we're looking at. Now, once we have seen the conversion assessment questionnaire, we go back to the customer, and when we say that, okay, in most cases we have seen that it is possible to enable applications on DB2 because most of the stuff which is covered in Oracle is getting covered in DB2 as well. So that's when we create a project plan and we try and allocate resources to them. We look at the architectural considerations, things like what hardware and software that we're looking at. Do we continue to use the same hardware, or do we procure new hardware? Because DB2 works on some of IBM hardware much better than any other regular hardware that you get in the market. And then what are the dependencies as far as the business is concerned? Does it really suit my business cycle? Does it come in between the renewal of licensing agreement that I have? So should I withhold renewal of licenses, or should I go ahead with the renewal of licenses and still have the POC going? So all these questions, again, for a project manager, they have to consider these things. Now, once we